Air Force, they've lost 3 games by 3 points. So you're looking at them, at this point in the year, they could easily be a 6-win team. I think they're a team that's improving, especially defensively. Earlier in the year, they had a lot of games they were giving up 40 and 50, and I think they, did some good coaching. They tweaked some things and are playing better defense here the last few weeks. So they're going to present a challenge, and we got to go, handle playing on the road, handle really what's probably going to be our first, game that's got, it's not going to be real cold, but it'll probably be in the 40s at kickoff and things, and defend a different kind of offense than we've seen all year. And they're going to present a challenge. We got to do a better job of securing the football. That'll be a big point of emphasis in practice today, in our meeting yesterday and today. And surely this is a team that I don't think we can beat if we turn the ball over 4 times. This will be a limited possession game. We kind of have limited possessions anyway, the way we play, and then I think Air Force is even more limited than us. So it'll be a short possession, short rep game. We got to make the most of each rep.
It wasn't all that long ago that Craig Bowl looked at this Air Force team and called them, kind of the triple option on steroids and all that. Would you kind of agree with that sentiment off of what you've seen on film?
Yeah, what's interesting, I don't know if they're doing as much true triple option as they used to, but they have very good schemes. Their trap is a good play. They run their midline where the quarterback keeps it a lot. I'm concerned. Kemper, their big quarterback, he's a load. He gets downhill, he's 245 pounds, which is probably the biggest option quarterback I've ever seen. So, you got to really get your pads behind you and run your feet on contact against him. And they're very multiple formation-wise. They use tight ends a lot more. It used to be in the old days it was the 3 backs and 2 split-out flankers, and they're not in that formation as much. They use a lot of 2 tight ends. They do a really good job, and they're tough to stop. They end up in a lot of short yardage situations, a lot of 3rd and 2s, 4th and 1s. I thought that was one of the strengths of our defense last week, because we had some huge stops in those downs. I think that's something that we'll have to do again this week, because this is not a team you can say you're going to consistently get in 3rd and 7.
They opened with a lot of teams in and out of conference that were really good offensively, and then they kind of hit the midpoint of the season and things kind of point totals kind of started going down a bit more. What are the things that you kind of noticed that they've tweaked to kind of get those totals down a bit more?
I think they're playing a lot more zone. I think early in the year they played a little bit more man and sometimes got into mismatches and things. I think they're limiting their big plays by staying on top of routes, not letting people throw the ball over their head. Getting more eyes on the ball, getting more hats to the football to make up for a missed tackle. They play exceptionally hard, both sides of the ball. But I think limiting big plays and playing a little bit more zone coverage has probably been 2 of the biggest changes I've seen.
Back to Will. Air Force is down. Just you look at their record, you think they're down, but can that be explained away by saying there's the influence of the NIL and the transfer portal, that the service academies can't take advantage of that?
Yeah, I do think that's a lot tougher job just with the current status. They have no NIL. They still lose guys to the transfer portal. They lose some good players to the transfer portal, but they can't add anybody. So I do think those jobs are probably harder now than they were 5-6 years ago. Because Coach Calhoun's a very good coach. He's the dean of coaches in this conference, been there longer than anybody, and does a really good job. And I think they're doing a good job of evolving. I think their O-line, does a good job, with what they ask him to do. I think 96 is a really good player at nose guard. He really caught my eye. He's a guy I think can play for anybody in our conference. 30, who's kind of their stand-up, Jack, is a good player. Their inside linebacker, 6, is a good player. Actually, his father was a high school coach in Wisconsin. He used to recruit his high school. So they're doing a good job. I think it's tough. And again, they've had 3 heartbreaking 3-point losses.
Do you think local fans are still getting used to meaningful games in November because the crowds are bigger and we're talking about tiebreaker scenarios for the Mountain West Championship?
I thought they did a darn good job last week turning out. It was a good crowd. I was not disappointed by 27,000. They came out and did a good job, and we'll have to gather them up again next week. A little Black Friday. You can drop the shopper and your family off to go shopping. You can come watch football. It's a perfect timing for about 3 hours of shopping, and then go pick them up. But for this week, check us out on TV. I know there'll be some people driving up. It's a drivable game, but it gives you something to watch. It's meaningful in November, which is a good thing.
I guess we can ask this question next week, but I was looking at the tiebreaker scenarios for the Mountain West. You almost need an attorney to help you go through that stuff.
Yeah, we just, my message to the team, we just got to focus on what we can control, because we can't get ahead of ourselves. Obviously we got to take care of our business in this game more than anything else. And no one's going to win the conference this weekend. Next weekend is where all that stuff will come into play. And I've always had a feeling that if you work really hard and take care of your business, usually life works out. I'm pretty blessed that way, and I hope it'll happen for our team if we take care of our business. But we got to have a great week of preparation. I do think we're still growing in that. We've probably been favorites more this year in games than we had been in the past. And I don't think, certainly it was not a team-wide thing, but I think there might have been some guys who relaxed a little bit, or thought that game was going to be a little easier, and it surely wasn't. And really, there's very few college football games that are easy. I mean, there are conference games are never easy. So we found a way to win, which I'm happy about. But I think we got to make sure we're playing better than we're expected to win, because I expect us to be expected to win a lot in the future. So we've got to get used to it and be better at it.
Speaking of expected, Coach, has your team exceeded your expectations on you for the first year?
I'd say it's met my expectations. I thought we could be at this point. I think we have a chance to exceed it over the next few weeks. But that was my vision, is looking at this year as being a bowl team and having a winning record. And those are really my expectations coming in.
And as far as the way this thing is, last 2 weeks of the season, have you ever been in a situation where there's a log jam in all of these scenarios in the last 2 weeks of the season?
Yeah, I really haven't. And I've been, Van, and I've been in FCS football a long time, in Division II, which doesn't have conference championship games. And even back, when I was at Ball State in the MAC, I'm pretty sure we didn't even have a conference championship game yet. Maybe we did, I can't remember. We weren't very good, so we weren't close to it. But that obviously adds a different deal to it, because it's not just about being number one, and you got to be in the top two. And a lot of conferences where you don't have a conference championship game, you would say we'd control our own destiny for a conference championship. We'd probably tie, but that's how it was in FCS. If you had two teams or three that were 6-2, you were just co-champions, and you went to the playoffs. So I haven't been. This will be a new situation, and I just know if we worry too much about the what ifs, we're putting less attention on the stuff we can't control, which is how we play, our effort and our execution this week. It needs to be really good against Air Force, because they're going to execute, they're going to play hard.
Coach, you mentioned about emphasis on taking care of the ball. The negative is I think you are last in fumbles lost in the nation. What do you do more this week than you haven't done the previous weeks to emphasize that?
In our offensive unit meeting, we had a little just reteaching some basics from training camp type stuff on ball security. We're going to do which will be new for me. Austin Brawley brought it up to me, because I think we got to get better at getting the ball out on defense too. We've gotten some fumble recoveries this year, but most of them I think are more on force than forced. The last 2 weeks we've gotten one where they're pitching it around at the end of the game. It really wasn't that we stripped it out. We got one against UNLV where they botched a handoff and the ball was just on the ground. We fell on it. It's good to fall on those, but I'd like to see more that we create by ripping out. And I thought Colorado State did a good job. So we're going to do 5 minutes of practice today. Offense versus defense. Offense, ball security, defense, stripping, because I think those are two areas that we can improve on as a team. And again, we're 7-3 and we're -9 turnover margin. I told the team in camp that turning around our turnover margin was going to be a big part of how we turned around this program, and we really haven't, because I think last year they were about -9. So I do think it's certainly a way that if we improve on that, I think we can improve as a team.
A caveat to that, and this is a word stat that I just looked up, I think you guys are number 5 in points allowed compared to turnovers lost. So
our defense has done a very good job in sudden change. You look like last week after one of the turnovers, we get a 3rd and 2 stop and a 4th and 1 stop. And again, I think that's part of who we are as a team. We talk a lot about we're going to be a mentally tough team, and how do you respond when something bad happens, because Just because you turn over and you give the ball to the other team does not mean they're going to score necessarily. And I think we've shown good fight. Even this weekend, the one we allowed a touchdown, it took them to a 4th down. They had 1st and goal in the 7, and we had them 4th and goal at the 4. We battled, and then they punched it in a 4th down. So credit, I think that's a major strength of our defense, that they're very resilient in those situations.
Is that something you can teach or kind of do in practice, the adversity kind of drills, or?
Yeah, I think you can do special situation periods. We usually call it sudden change. Sometimes we do that in fall camp. We have a sudden change period where all of a sudden you switch and you got to go right on the field when you weren't expecting to make a play. But I think more than anything, it's a mindset and something you kind of talk into existence by emphasizing.
Yeah, if you take away the 2 defensive scores off of like a turnover, we've stopped opponents 8 of 19 times. Opponents have only stopped us once because we've had 3 turnovers on the last play of the half.
I think you retweeted like a Dan Casey clip of like a peanut punch today. Is that a little bit of like motivation for the team there?
I thought it was a great clip of ball security, and that's just how Coach Johnson teaches it, taking the opposite wrist over the ball. So yeah, it's making a point of that.
And this Air Force offensive line was they're a Joe Moore watch list team like around midseason, all that as well. Like, clearly a very good offensive line. What are you seeing out of them in particular at this point?
I think they fit perfectly for what they do. Their tackles, Tate and Vonahar, they're good. They can get out and reach guys. They can down block in combination. And that's a good guard. Cooley's solid at center, and they got pretty decent size. I mean, the left tackle's a little smaller, but I'd say all the other guys are really traditional size. Sometimes service academies have smaller O-lines. We played Kennesaw State when I was at South Dakota State, and that was a couple coaching staffs that go for them. So they ran the option back then, and they had real small linemen, like 240-pound linemen. They're still pretty good. But they do an excellent job. They block things right. I mean, the thing that's pretty amazing is you don't see them like turn guys loose. No matter what teams play against them. And I think the tough thing for them is they don't. Teams a lot of times will play them differently than they play other teams, so they really don't know what they're going to see, but yet they are so schooled in their rules, they always block stuff right, they don't turn guys loose. They're very tough to confuse. Tight ends are good blockers. I think 21 is a really good kind of combo player who's kind of a receiver, kind of a running back, get in the C gap and block. So they're a good football team, and they're excellent at what they do, and I do think an offense like this continues to get better as the year goes on. As your timing gets better, and you're getting better on defense as well.
You mentioned Kennesaw State there. I mean, what other, throughout your career, what other kind of like option teams have you gone up against, with any regularity, if at all?
When I was a player, Ohio University ran the option back in the day, and we beat them pretty bad. Coach Cosgrove was the OP coordinator. He gave us some tips because he still talks about how well they defended them, and I appreciated them defending them well because then we beat them like 52-10, so I got to play at the end of that game. We played Army when I was at Ball State and lost a close game. That's a really cool environment, Nishi Stadium there, right on the river there. I never played against Navy. This was my first game ever coaching against the Air Force. So Kennesaw State did a good job, and they've changed some of the cutting rules over the years with how much they can cut. I just remember after that Kennesaw State game, we were beat up, just cut. We ended up having to play like a Saturday to Friday turnaround and played North Dakota State. That was like the quarterfinals. I think we played North Dakota State in the semifinals, and they blew us out. We were beat the crap from just getting cut so much. But now they don't let you like cut outside in. They used to let the wing backs kind of arc and then cut your linebackers coming in from the side. They changed some of those rules. So these guys cut the line of scrimmage, but you really don't see the perimeter cuts you used to see from the option teams.
Coach, is there any update on the status of Lopestein?
He's going to practice some today, so we'll see. I don't think I'd quite say he's probable yet or anything, but he's going to do some things today, and he's a tough sucker, really wants to go. So,
Coach, it's been a really interesting road trip or road season for you. The Big House, the Rose Bowl, Allegiant Stadium, Smurf Turf, the Bay Area. Now you get to go to see one of the service academies. I mean, how memorable is it to go on these trips for a bunch of guys who probably never been exposed to that before?
Yeah, I think it's been great. We get this will be education for me and our team. I know one of our other coaches shared with me some clips, Bo Davidson. how they do their school song at the end. I got to brush up on exactly what the proper etiquette is, but we want to honor that because, again, though we certainly want to beat these guys in the field, have a lot of respect for what they do to serve our country and represent our country. And I'm glad these guys are tough and gritty and competitive and smart because that's what you want protecting your country. So a lot of respect for these guys, a lot of respect for Coach Calhoun. I really enjoyed, I did not know him until I got hired here to this job, but I enjoyed visiting with him. At head coaches events we have throughout the year. Just I always think there's wisdom for a guy who's been doing it, whatever, 18, 19 years like he has, for someone who's still learning like myself.
Coach, could you talk about what kind of motor Austin Brawley had on him? He just came in, he just affected the game, man.
I don't know if I've ever seen a guy, have an injury like that where you missed, what do you miss, 8 games and then come back and have such an impact. It's a lot different than, missing 1 game and coming back or something. But he came out missing 8 games and, short yardage stops, interceptions, interceptions that set up the score. He was unbelievable. And, I think he's got just a knack. He loves to play football. He's competitive as get out. He's athletic. He's not the biggest guy, but he's fast. I think he has great respect of his teammates. He was able to come in and earn the respect and get the captain's votes. And again, I think that was you look at our captains this year, the 6. We have 2 guys who were here, who were captains last year. Then you have 3 guys who were at Idaho, kind of knew our system. Also, they had teammates who came with them, so they probably had 6 or 7 votes already. And then Brawley's the other guy, and so that shows the kind of respect he has garnered from his teammates. And he's a student of the game. One of the plays that he blows up on a 3rd and 2 was a bunch toss, and it was great field recognition. He knew from that formation, short yards, what play they were going to run. As soon as the ball snapped, he shoots by the blockers and beats them for TFL. I mean, that was an amazing performance. Well deserved to get Conference Defensive Player of the Week. That was an extremely impactful game.
I don't know if the answer has changed all that much from Saturday, but Gabe and Abe, are you looking to get them at practice this week, or what's that looking like?
We'll see. We're still, looking through protocols and things, and hopefully we'll know something more later this week. So I don't think they're quite ready to go full today, and we're hoping. So.
And obviously, Tyler Lawrence, going up against his old team and all that as well. I mean, Coach Booth kind of talked about in the fall camp. He was a guy that had to learn to pass set, coming out of all that as well. How have you seen him kind of develop and kind of grow into his role this year?
I think he's done a nice job. He started every game. He was a guy that, probably coming out of spring ball, coming into fall camp, we probably didn't have him penciled in like, the top even 6 or 7. He might have been 8th or 9th. And he's continued to improve. He's been steady. I still think he's got a lot of room for growth. He can improve technique stuff. He can keep improving his athleticism, his strength in the off season. But he's done a good job. He's been consistent. He's started every game for a 7-win team, and obviously coming from a totally different offense from what he played in. And, I think he has certainly matured and grown. When he first got here, he'd be a guy who was like once a week was like late for weightlifting, which I kind of thought to myself, it's good this guy's not defending our country. But he's grown. He's not late for weightlifting anymore. He's matured. He's come a long way. Probably.
Wow.
There's an orb between Kaiwan and Caleb at the nickel spot. Obviously Caleb had the pick on Saturday, but Kaiwan I think played a considerable deal more.
Yeah.
What is kind of going on there with those guys?
Yeah, I think we should have played Caleb a little bit more. I just think those guys they both bring good things. They're a little different in what they add. I think the rep count ended up like 48-11, and then Caleb was one of our top 3 guys that we thought played well in the game. So when I hear the defense telling me that, I'm saying, well, why is he playing 11 snaps? If he's playing that well, we got to make that more even. And part of that was the flow of the game, and I think it's something you really got to guard against on defense. It happens naturally on offense. Like on offense, if I wanted to rotate 2 guys at guard, and I kind of wanted to play even snaps, and I was doing every other series, and at the end of the game, one played a lot more. I don't really mind that on offense, because that means when he was in there were longer drives. On defense, it's the opposite. If you go every other drive and one guy ends up playing 20 snaps and the other guy plays 40, that tells you when that guy's in there moving the ball more and they're staying on the field. So you got to really, watch that on defense. You know, if you're trying to sub guys evenly, you got to be careful doing it by series, because if one guy's playing a lot better, he's probably going to play less snaps because they're going to get off the field. So I think they're both good players, and we got to use both those guys.
Obviously, you know, we talked a lot about the fumbles on Saturday and all that. They're a huge part of kind of the offensive issues and all that as well. But you did note that there were other issues, you know, kind of up front in terms of blocking and all that as well. You're going up against a very different offense, you know, this weekend. How are you kind of addressing some of those issues this week?
Yeah, and I think look at the tape more than ever. It was, you know, we had a few errors of just inconsistent execution, which is like, all right, here's two plays where you did this exact same play exactly the way it's supposed to be, and here's the play at crunch time we did. I thought there were some times when the game was on the line on offense, like the last series, where we could have better effort. And you know, again, I think you got to understand, and that's learning as a team. You know, for some young players, some weren't young players, that hey, you know, game's on the line, man. Guys are playing their ass off. You know, you gotta up your effort. You know, if you're straining on the last series, they're trying to get the ball back on defense. We're trying to run out the clock. So, you know, it's as simple as usually is effort and doing exactly what you're supposed to do at a more consistent rate.
Last one.
Coach, your kicker won Special Teams Player of the Week again. And of course, this past offseason, months in the job, you awarded him with a scholarship. What have you seen from Luke, and just kind of what it's shown to be now with how clutch he is?
He's awesome. If I could clone Luke and have him be my kicker for every year of the rest of my coaching career, I would. He's unbelievable. He's consistent. He's real even keeled, like emotional stability, which I think is what you want from a kicker. Not too high, not too low. You know, like I think the game he missed his win. He only missed one kick this year, and then when he missed it, he came back and made kicks that game. So like he's not, you know, one bad play doesn't affect his next one, which I think some kickers struggle with. Just outstanding and having a great year. You know, in my mind, he's a first-team all-conference kicker. But I think there's a guy like in Hawaii who's like 30 for 30, so that might be tough to beat him. But he's a heck of a player.
He's also oblivious because he's right back in there and he's not even paying attention.
Hi, Luke.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, fellas.